Introduction: The enduring legacy of Chinese civilization. Chinese civilization stands as one of the oldest and most influential cultures in the world, with a history spanning thousands of years. From its earliest roots in the fertile valleys of the Yellow and Yangtze rivers to its modern manifestation as the People's Republic of China, this civilization has made profound contributions to human history in areas as diverse as philosophy, science, art, technology, and governance. To understand the enduring legacy of Chinese civilization, it is essential to examine not only its historical achievements but also the geographic and environmental foundations that shaped its development, as well as the overarching themes that have driven its evolution over millennia. These include the continuous tension between unity and fragmentation, the ongoing processes of innovation and adaptation, and the ways in which Chinese society has balanced continuity with change. Significance of Chinese civilization in world history. Chinese civilization has shaped the trajectory of East Asia and left a lasting imprint on the world as a whole. As one of the four great ancient civilizations, alongside those of Mesopotamia, Egypt, and India, China's contributions to human development are immense. Chinese thought, particularly Confucianism, has profoundly influenced the cultural and political systems not only in China but also across East Asia, impacting countries such as Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. The principles of governance, ethics, and social organization established in China have endured for centuries, and the ideas developed during the various dynasties continue to resonate in modern Chinese society and beyond. China's achievements in areas like technology and the arts have also set the stage for later global advancements. The invention of paper, gunpowder, the compass, and printing are just a few examples of Chinese ingenuity that revolutionized the world. Moreover, the Silkroad, an ancient network of trade routes connecting China with Central Asia, the Middle East, and Europe, facilitated cultural exchange and the spread of goods, ideas, and technologies. In this way, China has not only been a creator of innovation but also a crucial conduit for global interconnectedness. Another key aspect of China's significance is its long-standing unity as a single political entity. While many other ancient civilizations fragmented or fell into decay, China managed to preserve a unified state through much of its history. The concept of a centralized Chinese state, embodied in the idea of the mandate of heaven, persisted through dynasties, despite numerous challenges. The ability of the Chinese people to unify under various dynasties and rebuild after periods of fragmentation is a defining feature of their history. Geographic and environmental foundations, Yellow and Yangtze river valleys. To understand the unique trajectory of Chinese civilization, we must first consider the geographic and environmental factors that influenced its development. Unlike the river valleys of Mesopotamia or Egypt, where civilizations arose in relatively smaller areas, Chinese civilization developed across a vast, diverse landscape. Two major river systems, the Yellow River, Huanghe, in the north and the Yangtze River, Changjiang, in the south, provided the fertile soil and resources necessary for the growth of a complex society. The Yellow River, often referred to as the cradle of Chinese civilization, is the second longest river in China and is historically significant for its role in the development of agriculture and settlement. The river's basin, known for its rich, lush soil, was ideal for growing millet, one of the first staple crops cultivated by ancient Chinese farmers. However, the river's unpredictable flooding, caused by frequent silt deposits, also led to devastating disasters, which in turn fostered a deep-rooted culture of environmental awareness and resource management. The constant challenge of controlling the Yellow River's floods has shaped Chinese governance and technological innovation throughout history, particularly in areas of irrigation and flood control. In contrast, the Yangtze River, the longest river in China, flows through the fertile south and became the heartland for rice cultivation. The region surrounding the Yangtze is renowned for its ability to support larger and more consistent agricultural output due to its more stable climatic conditions. This fertile land has allowed southern China to become a demographic and economic powerhouse, with a population density that continues to grow today. The Yangtze's role in China's agricultural and economic development made it an important center of trade and commerce from the ancient period through to the modern era. The division between the agricultural practices in the north and south also created cultural and political differences throughout Chinese history, with the north often more focused on militaristic expansion, while the south became a center for commerce, culture, and innovation. Despite these differences, the geography of China allowed for the emergence of a unified culture, with shared values, beliefs, and practices, even as the political landscape changed over time. Themes: unity and fragmentation, innovation, continuity, and change. The history of Chinese civilization is characterized by a delicate balance between unity and fragmentation. Throughout its long history, China has experienced cycles of unification under powerful dynasties and periods of division when regional powers vied for dominance. The rise and fall of these dynasties illustrate a recurring tension between central authority and the forces of regionalism. Despite this, the cultural and political unity of China often managed to reassert itself, often in the face of overwhelming odds, and this recurring cycle of fragmentation and reunification has shaped much of China's historical narrative. Innovation has been another central theme in Chinese history. The Chinese have long been known for their ability to invent and adapt, as seen in their technological advancements and artistic achievements. From the development of bronze casting during the Shang dynasty to the invention of printing during the Tang dynasty, China has continually pushed the boundaries of human creativity. Yet, innovation in China was often grounded in practical needs, whether driven by agricultural necessity, military strategy, or the desire for social harmony. This pragmatic approach to innovation is one of the defining features of Chinese civilization. At the same time, continuity has been a fundamental theme throughout Chinese history. Despite the many changes in political power, the continuity of Chinese culture, values, and philosophical traditions has remained strong. The centrality of Confucianism, for example, provided a moral and political framework that endured through centuries, influencing everything from government policies to social relationships. Similarly, practices such as ancestor worship and respect for family have persisted throughout China's history, acting as stabilizing forces in times of turbulence. Finally, change is an inevitable and ever-present theme in Chinese civilization. While certain traditions have endured, China has also undergone dramatic transformations in terms of its political structures, technological developments, and social organization. From the ancient dynastic rule to the communist revolution of the 20th century, China has seen sweeping changes that have reshaped not only its own identity but also its role in the world. The Shang dynasty, circa 1600 to 1046 BCE. The Shang dynasty, also known as the Yin dynasty, represents one of the earliest periods of Chinese history where a relatively cohesive political structure and advanced cultural achievements began to emerge. This dynasty, which flourished along the fertile Yellow River in northern China, marks the beginning of the Chinese civilization in its historical form, influencing the subsequent dynasties that would follow. The Shang period is particularly notable for its significant archaeological discoveries, advanced technology, and the consolidation of political, religious, and social structures that would shape China's future. Origins and archaeological evidence. Oraclebones, Anyang, and the Yellow River. The origins of the Shang dynasty are somewhat shrouded in mystery, with much of what we know derived from archaeological evidence and ancient texts. According to ancient Chinese historical writings, the Shang dynasty succeeded the Xia dynasty, although direct evidence of the Xia's existence remains debated among scholars. What is clear, however, is that the Shang dynasty established itself along the Yellow River, Huanghe, an area historically known for its agricultural abundance and strategic location. The archaeological site of Anyang, located in modern-day Hunan province, is of paramount importance to our understanding of the Shang dynasty. Excavations at Anyang have uncovered the remains of the last Shang capital, known as Yin, where significant evidence of Shang culture was found, including royal tombs, palaces, and workshops. One of the most remarkable discoveries at Anyang was the oracle bones, tortoise shells and ox bones inscribed with the earliest known Chinese writing. These oracle bones were used by Shang rulers to consult deities and spirits regarding matters of state, health, and fortune. The practice of divination through these bones not only reveals the spiritual and religious beliefs of the Shang but also marks the beginnings of the Chinese writing system. The Yellow River Valley, often referred to as the cradle of Chinese civilization, played a central role in the development of the Shang dynasty. The fertile soil from the river's lush deposits made agriculture the backbone of the Shang economy. The river's significance extends beyond just its role in farming. It also acted as a transportation and communication route, linking various regions within the dynasty's domain. Political structure, kingship, religious authority, and bureaucracy. The political system of the Shang dynasty was centered around the figure of the king, who held both secular and religious authority. The Shang king was not only a political ruler but also considered a spiritual intermediary between the gods and the people. The king's power was closely tied to the belief in divine approval, and his ability to maintain harmony with the gods through rituals and sacrifices was seen as crucial to the stability of the realm. In terms of governance, the Shang dynasty had a highly organized bureaucratic structure. The king relied on a class of officials and regional leaders, known as noble families and military generals, to manage various regions of the dynasty. These officials were often appointed based on loyalty and merit, and they assisted the king in governing vast territories. The Shang kings also commanded a strong military force, which was used both for defense and expansion. The bureaucracy's primary task was to enforce the king's decrees and ensure the smooth operation of the kingdom, particularly in agriculture and trade. Religious practices were deeply entwined with political governance. The Shang religion was polytheistic, and the worship of gods, spirits, and ancestors was an integral part of state rituals. The king's role as a religious figure was reinforced by the use of oraclebones to consult the gods, which further consolidated the king's authority. Sacrificial rituals, often involving the sacrifice of humans, animals, and valuable goods, were performed to appease the gods and ensure the king's reign would continue uninterrupted. Society and economy. Agriculture, bronze technology, social hierarchy. The economy of the Shang dynasty was predominantly agrarian, with rice and millet as the main crops grown in the fertile river valley. Agriculture formed the base of the Shang economy, but it was supplemented by other industries such as bronze production and trade. The Shang were particularly advanced in bronze metallurgy, creating tools, weapons, and ceremonial items that were both functional and artistic. The most famous example of Shang craftsmanship is the elaborate bronze vessels and weapons that were often used in religious ceremonies. Social structure in Shang society was hierarchical, with the king at the top, followed by the nobility, military leaders, artisans, and peasants. The nobility and military elites held significant wealth and power, while artisans and craftsmen played crucial roles in the economy, especially in the production of bronze goods and ceremonial items. Slavery was also present in Shang society, with captives taken in warfare often serving as laborers or sacrifices in religious rituals. Despite the technological advances in metallurgy, agriculture remained the most important economic activity, and much of Shang society's labor force was dedicated to farming. Farmers worked under the direction of the nobility and were often required to give a portion of their crops as tribute or tax. Writing system, emergence, and significance. The development of a writing system during the Shang dynasty was one of its most significant cultural achievements. The discovery of oracle bones provided the earliest evidence of the Chinese script, a system of logograms that represented words or morphemes. These inscriptions were used primarily for divination, but they also provide valuable insights into the political, economic, and religious life of the Shang people. The written script evolved over time, and its legacy continued throughout Chinese history, serving as the foundation for later Chinese writing systems. The significance of the Shang writing system cannot be overstated. It not only allowed for the recording of events and the documentation of royal decrees but also contributed to the preservation of Chinese history, culture, and philosophy for centuries to come. This system formed the basis for the continuous tradition of written language in China, which remains a distinctive feature of Chinese culture. Art, religion, and burial practices. The Shang dynasty is also known for its impressive art and religious practices. The Shang people created intricate bronze work, including ritual vessels, weapons, and ceremonial tools. These items were often ornately decorated with animal motifs, particularly dragons and tigers, reflecting the Shang's reverence for nature and the spiritual world. Religion was central to Shang society, and the worship of ancestors and deities played a major role in everyday life. The king, as the chief religious figure, performed elaborate rituals to honor the gods and secure the prosperity of the realm. Ancestor worship was an important part of Shang religious practice, with the belief that deceased ancestors had the power to influence the living. These beliefs influenced later Chinese traditions and became deeply ingrained in Chinese culture. Shang burial practices were also significant, particularly the royal tombs, which were often filled with valuable items for the afterlife. Archaeological excavations at Anyang have revealed extensive royal tombs, many of which contained bronze vessels, jade ornaments, and human sacrifices. These burial practices reflect the Shang's belief in an afterlife and their commitment to ensuring that their rulers were properly equipped for life after death. Downfall and legacy. The Shang dynasty's decline began around 1046 BCE, when the Zhou people, led by King Wu, defeated the Shang army in the Battle of Mai. The Zhou's conquest of the Shang marked the end of the dynasty and the beginning of the Zhou dynasty. Despite the fall of the Shang, its influence on Chinese civilization continued to be felt in the centuries that followed. The legacy of the Shang dynasty lies in its advancements in bronze technology, writing, and religion. These innovations laid the groundwork for future Chinese dynasties and influenced the development of Chinese culture and society. The Shang also set the stage for the political structures that would later be refined under the Zhou and subsequent dynasties. The Shang people, though their rule was relatively short, helped to shape the foundations of Chinese civilization, making them one of the most important dynasties in Chinese history. The Zhou dynasty, c. 1046 to 256 BCE. The Zhou dynasty followed the Shang dynasty and would become one of the longest-lasting dynasties in Chinese history, lasting for over 8 centuries. The Zhou period is divided into 2 major phases: the Western Zhou, 1046 to 771 BCE, and the Eastern Zhou, 770 to 256 BCE, each marked by distinct political, social, and cultural developments. The Zhou dynasty is significant for its introduction of key political ideas, including the Mandate of Heaven, which would later become a cornerstone of Chinese political philosophy. Conquest of the Shang and the Mandate of Heaven. The Zhou dynasty's rise began with the conquest of the Shang in 1046 BCE. The Zhou, originally a vassal state under Shang rule, grew increasingly powerful and eventually led a rebellion against the Shang king, Dexin. The Zhou victory at the Battle of Mai resulted in the fall of the Shang dynasty and the establishment of Zhou rule. Following their victory, the Zhou established the Mandate of Heaven as a central political doctrine. According to this belief, the ruler's right to govern was granted by heaven, but this mandate was not absolute. If a ruler became corrupt or failed to govern effectively, heaven could withdraw its support, leading to the ruler's downfall. This concept became a key justification for the overthrow of dynasties and provided a moral framework for the legitimacy of the ruling power. Western Zhou, feudal system, political organization, and expansion. During the Western Zhou period, the Zhou kings established a feudal system of governance. The king, at the top of the hierarchy, granted land and power to his loyal supporters, who in turn governed smaller territories. This system helped to maintain control over the vast areas of the Zhou Empire, which extended from the Yellow River Valley into central and western China. The feudal system was based on reciprocal loyalty between the king and his vassals. In exchange for land and power, the vassals were expected to offer military service and tribute to the king. This system allowed the Zhou to expand their territory and consolidate power, fostering a sense of unity and stability. Eastern Zhou, decline of central authority, rise of regional states. However, by the time of the Eastern Zhou period, the once strong central authority of the Zhou kings began to weaken. This decline in power led to the rise of regional states that were more or less independent. As central control faded, local rulers and military leaders grew increasingly autonomous, leading to a period of political fragmentation. This fragmentation eventually culminated in the Spring and Autumn period, 771 to 476 BCE, and the Warring States period, 475 to 221 BCE, during which numerous states fought for dominance, leading to both innovation and turmoil. Spring and Autumn period, philosophical ferment, Confucius and early schools of thought. The Spring and Autumn period was marked by great philosophical ferment. The fragmentation of power and the constant warfare provided fertile ground for the development of new ideas about governance, ethics, and society. This period saw the emergence of several important schools of thought, including Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism. Confucius, one of China's most influential philosophers, lived during this time, and his teachings would go on to shape Chinese society for centuries. Confucianism emphasized the importance of moral integrity, family loyalty, and respect for authority, providing a framework for governance and social harmony. Warring States period, warfare, innovation, and the path to unification. The Warring States period, 475 to 221 BC, was characterized by constant warfare between the 7 dominant states of China. This era of intense conflict also saw significant military innovations, such as the widespread use of iron weapons, cavalry, and crossbows. These advancements in technology, alongside strategic warfare, played a crucial role in the eventual unification of China under the Qin dynasty. The period also saw the rise of legalism, a philosophy that emphasized strict laws and harsh punishments to maintain order and control over society. The teachings of legalism influenced the Qin state and played a critical role in the later unification of China. Society, economy, and technological advances. During the Zhou dynasty, Chinese society became more stratified, with a clear division between the ruling elite, farmers, artisans, and slaves. The economy continued to be largely agricultural, but iron tools began to replace bronze, which boosted agricultural productivity. The development of iron casting also led to the production of stronger weapons, helping the Zhou state to expand its borders. Technological advances also included improvements in pottery, textiles, and the construction of fortifications. The Zhou period was marked by significant social and economic changes that laid the foundation for future Chinese civilization. Cultural and intellectual legacy. The Zhou dynasty, despite its political fragmentation and eventual decline, left a profound cultural and intellectual legacy. The Mandate of Heaven and the feudal system were both influential in the political philosophy of China, and the philosophical movements that arose during the Spring and Autumn and Warring States periods continue to resonate in modern Chinese thought. The Zhou period also saw the development of the classic of poetry, classic of history, and other texts that became central to Chinese education and philosophy. The intellectual legacy of the Zhou continues to shape Chinese culture and governance to this day. The Qin dynasty, 221 to 206 BCE. The Qin dynasty was short-lived but profoundly influential, marking a critical turning point in Chinese history. Under the leadership of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, the Qin dynasty achieved the unification of China after centuries of fragmentation during the Warring States period. The political and social reforms instituted during the Qin period would lay the groundwork for the imperial system that lasted until the early 20th century. Unification under Qin Shi Huang. Conquest and centralization. The Qin dynasty's rise to power began with the unification of the various warring states of China. Qin Shi Huang, originally known as King Zheng of the Qin state, became the first ruler to unify China in 221 BC. His conquests were characterized by ruthless military strategy, combining a disciplined army, advanced technologies, and a well-organized state apparatus. The Qin armies defeated the 6 other major states, Qi, Chu, Yan, Han, Zhao, and Wei, one by one. Once Qin Shi Huang achieved victory, he declared himself the first emperor, Huangdi, and set about consolidating power. He centralized control by abolishing the feudal system that had previously allowed the nobility to hold power in the various regions. The emperor took direct control over all regions, and provincial governors were appointed to enforce imperial edicts. Qin Shi Huang's rule was marked by the centralization of authority across the newly unified empire. This involved creating a single, cohesive government structure that could enforce laws and maintain order. The legalist philosophy of governance became the foundation of the Qin state, emphasizing strict control and state power. Under this system, there was little tolerance for dissent, and the power of local elites was severely restricted. Legalism as state philosophy. The Qin dynasty adopted legalism as its guiding philosophy. Unlike Confucianism, which emphasized morality and benevolence in rulers, legalism focused on the belief that people were inherently selfish and required strict laws and harsh punishments to maintain social order. Li Si, the chancellor of the Qin state, was one of the most influential proponents of legalism during this period, helping Qin Shi Huang to implement this philosophy as the state ideology. Legalism's primary tenet was that the state's laws must be clear, absolute, and consistently enforced. The emperor's authority was supreme, and all subjects were expected to obey the law without question. Under legalism, the Qin regime imposed severe punishments for even minor offenses and worked to suppress any form of rebellion or disobedience. The centralization of power, along with these strict laws, made the Qin state both powerful and feared. Standardization, script, weights, measures, currency, and infrastructure. One of the most remarkable achievements of the Qin dynasty was the standardization of various systems across the empire. Qin Shi Huang implemented sweeping reforms that affected almost every aspect of daily life in China, ensuring that the vast empire operated more efficiently and cohesively. Script. The written script was standardized to create a uniform system of communication throughout China. Prior to this, each state had used its own version of Chinese characters, which often led to confusion and miscommunication. Qin Shi Huang ordered the creation of a standardized script, which greatly improved administrative efficiency and communication across regions. Weights and measures. The Qin emperor also standardized weights and measures, which ensured consistency in trade, taxation, and the economy. The adoption of uniform units for length, volume, and weight helped facilitate commerce and promote economic stability. Currency. Qin Shi Huang introduced a uniform currency system, which helped to eliminate the fragmented coinage that existed in different states. The new system included standardized bronze coins with a hole in the center, which could easily be strung together and transported. Infrastructure. The Qin dynasty undertook massive public works projects, including the construction of roads, canals, and irrigation systems. These infrastructure improvements were critical to enhancing trade, transportation, and communication across the empire, helping to solidify the central authority of the emperor. The Great Wall and monumental projects. Perhaps the most enduring symbol of Qin Shi Huang's rule is the Great Wall of China. While earlier walls and fortifications had existed to defend against northern nomadic tribes, Qin Shi Huang ordered the construction of a continuous wall along the northern frontier to protect his newly unified empire from invasions by the Xiongnu, an ancient nomadic people. The Great Wall was an enormous undertaking, stretching thousands of miles and requiring vast amounts of labor, much of which was provided by conscripted peasants. In addition to the Great Wall, Qin Shi Huang embarked on a variety of monumental building projects. One of the most famous is his own mausoleum, which houses the Terracotta Army, an army of life-sized clay soldiers, horses, and chariots created to accompany the emperor into the afterlife. The sheer scale and ambition of these projects underscore the emperor's desire to leave a lasting legacy. Repression and dissent. Book burnings, the fall of the Qin. Despite the achievements of the Qin dynasty, the emperor's rule was harsh and repressive. His strict adherence to legalism meant that those who opposed his policies faced severe punishment. This included the book burnings of 213 BCE, where Qin Shi Huang ordered the destruction of books that did not conform to the state ideology, particularly those of Confucian thought. The burning of texts and the execution of scholars were aimed at eliminating dissent and consolidating the emperor's power. This act severely curtailed intellectual freedom and left a lasting scar on China's cultural heritage. Furthermore, the emperor's policies of forced labor, heavy taxation, and military conscription led to widespread discontent among the populace. By the time of Qin Shi Huang's death in 210 BCE, the empire was already beginning to fracture under the weight of these oppressive measures. The Qin dynasty's harsh rule led to a series of revolts, and in 206 BCE, just 4 years after Qin Shi Huang's death, the dynasty collapsed, replaced by the rise of the Han dynasty. Lasting impact on Chinese statecraft. Though the Qin dynasty was short-lived, its impact on Chinese statecraft was profound. Many of the centralizing reforms that Qin Shi Huang implemented, such as the standardization of script, weights, measures, and currency, remained in place for centuries and were adopted by subsequent dynasties. Additionally, the imperial system that Qin Shi Huang established, with a centralized bureaucracy under the emperor's control, would serve as the model for China's imperial structure throughout its history. The Qin dynasty's emphasis on strong centralized power and control over the empire's vast territory set the tone for later Chinese dynasties, making the idea of a unified Chinese state a lasting feature of Chinese identity. While the dynasty itself lasted only 15 years, its legacy shaped China's imperial history for centuries. The Han dynasty, 206 BC, 220 CE. The Han dynasty succeeded the Qin dynasty and is often regarded as one of the golden ages of Chinese civilization. Spanning over 4 centuries, the Han dynasty witnessed the consolidation of the empire, remarkable cultural and technological advancements, and the establishment of many aspects of Chinese governance that continued for generations. Founding and consolidation. Liu Bang and the Han synthesis. The fall of the Qin dynasty led to a period of civil war, but ultimately, the Han dynasty emerged victorious under the leadership of Liu Bang, a former peasant rebel who became the first emperor of the Han, known as Emperor Gaozu. Liu Bang's success was partly due to his ability to unite various factions, including former Qin officials and military leaders, under his rule. One of the key characteristics of the Han dynasty was its ability to reconcile the authoritarian rule of the Qin with the Confucian ideals of governance. Liu Bang, who came from humble origins, sought to establish a government that would balance centralization with the traditional Confucian ideals of moral governance. This blend of legalism from the Qin dynasty and Confucianism, a philosophy emphasizing virtue, education, and filial piety, became known as the Han synthesis, which remained the guiding political ideology for centuries. Imperial bureaucracy and the civil service examination. Under the Han, the imperial bureaucracy was strengthened and further institutionalized. A complex civil service system was developed, with positions filled by individuals who passed rigorous exams based on Confucian teachings. This was a significant departure from earlier dynasties, where positions of power were often assigned based on birthright or loyalty. The Han system allowed for greater social mobility, as talented individuals could rise through the ranks based on their merit, rather than their family connections. Confucianism as state ideology. Confucianism became the official state ideology during the Han dynasty, significantly influencing Chinese politics, education, and culture. Emperor Wu of Han, 141 to 87 BC, formally adopted Confucianism, establishing Confucian scholars as key figures in the imperial bureaucracy. This helped to promote the values of filial piety, loyalty, and respect for hierarchy, which shaped Chinese society for centuries. Confucian ideas about governance emphasized benevolent rule and moral leadership, setting a standard for future Chinese emperors to follow. The Confucian emphasis on education also led to the establishment of state-sponsored schools to train scholars and officials, ensuring that the bureaucracy was staffed by knowledgeable and competent individuals. Expansion and the Silkroad. Trade, diplomacy, and cultural exchange. One of the greatest achievements of the Han dynasty was the expansion of its territory and the establishment of the Silkroad, a network of trade routes that connected China with Central Asia, the Middle East, and even parts of Europe. The Silk Road allowed for the exchange of goods, ideas, and cultures, making China a central player in world trade. The most famous products exchanged along the Silk Road were silk, porcelain, and spices, while China also imported horses, glassware, and precious stones. The Sui and Tang dynasties, 581 to 907. The Sui and Tang dynasties represent two critical periods in Chinese history, particularly for their role in reunifying China after the fragmentation of the Six Dynasties period. While the Sui dynasty was short-lived, it laid the foundations for the prosperity that followed in the Tang dynasty, often considered a golden age of Chinese civilization. The Tang era was a time of tremendous cultural, economic, and political expansion that would deeply influence Chinese society and the wider world for centuries. Reunification under the Sui, grand projects, and short reign. The Sui dynasty, founded by Emperor Wen in 581, marked the end of nearly 4 centuries of division in China. The Sui's rise to power came at a time when the northern and southern parts of China were fragmented into competing states. Emperor Wen's successful military campaigns against rival kingdoms led to the reunification of China in 589, thus bringing an end to the division and establishing the groundwork for the stability and prosperity of the Tang dynasty. One of the most ambitious projects of the Sui dynasty was the construction of the Grand Canal, a monumental feat of engineering that connected the Yellow and Yangtze rivers, facilitating the movement of grain and other goods across northern and southern China. This infrastructure project proved essential for unifying the economic and political systems of China, as it allowed for better communication and transportation across the vast empire. Additionally, the Grand Canal enhanced trade, fostering economic growth in previously isolated regions. Despite these achievements, the Sui dynasty was short-lived. The lavish spending on grand projects, military campaigns, and forced labor, coupled with heavy taxation, created widespread unrest. The Sui emperor's ambitious nature eventually led to rebellion, and in 618, just 37 years after its founding, the dynasty fell to internal revolt. However, its reunification of China and infrastructural advancements set the stage for the succeeding Tang dynasty. Tang dynasty, golden age of culture, cosmopolitanism, and expansion. The Tang dynasty, 618 to 907, is often considered the pinnacle of Chinese civilization, particularly for its cultural achievements, technological innovations, and diplomatic relationships. Under the leadership of Emperor Taizong and later emperors like Empress Wu Zetian, the Tang dynasty expanded its territory significantly, with borders stretching from Korea in the north to Vietnam in the south, and parts of Central Asia in the west. This expansion not only brought political power but also helped establish the Tang dynasty as a cosmopolitan empire. The Tang capital, Chang'an, was one of the largest and most prosperous cities in the world, with a population estimated at over 1 million people. It was a center of culture, trade, and intellectual exchange, where merchants, scholars, diplomats, and artists from different parts of the world gathered. The Silkroad played a critical role in this cosmopolitanism, as trade with Central Asia, India, the Middle East, and beyond flourished. The Tang government facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, and religions, contributing to an era of remarkable cultural diversity. The spread of Buddhism was particularly significant during the Tang period, as monks and scholars traveled to India, and Buddhist teachings and practices became deeply integrated into Chinese society. Government, law, and the examination system. One of the hallmarks of the Tang dynasty was the further development and refinement of the civil service examination system. While the system had roots in earlier periods, the Tang formalized it, making it a primary method of recruiting officials based on merit rather than birthright. This examination system was grounded in Confucian ideals and emphasized knowledge of Confucian classics, poetry, and administrative law. The Tang emperors also codified legal principles in the Tang Code, a set of laws that became the basis for legal systems in subsequent dynasties. The code emphasized clear regulations on behavior and punishment, consolidating the emperor's absolute authority. The legal and bureaucratic structures of the Tang dynasty allowed for a stable and efficient government, which fostered economic prosperity and cultural development, urbanization, trade, and the Silk Road. During the Tang dynasty, China's economy flourished due to several key factors, including expanded agricultural production, technological innovations, and an increasingly complex trade network. Silk production, already highly valued in China, was exported along the Silk Road to the Middle East and Europe, strengthening economic ties and enriching the Chinese court. The flourishing of foreign trade, particularly through maritime routes, enhanced China's cosmopolitan character, making it a global hub of commerce and culture. The growth of cities, particularly the capital Chang'an, helped stimulate an urban renaissance in the Tang period. The city was not only a political and economic center but also a cultural one, home to poets, musicians, and painters. The flourishing urban life of this period laid the foundations for future Chinese cities and was integral to the spread of both Chinese culture and Buddhism to neighboring regions. Poetry, painting, and religious diversity. The Tang period is often remembered as a golden age of Chinese poetry. Some of the most famous poets in Chinese history, including Li Bai and Du Fu, lived and wrote during this era. Their works, which captured themes of nature, personal reflection, and social issues, have had a lasting influence on Chinese literature. Tang artists also made significant advances in painting. Traditional landscape painting developed during this time, focusing on the natural world and the philosophical ideas of harmony between humanity and nature. The Tang dynasty's cultural output was not limited to poetry and painting. It was also a period of religious diversity. Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism coexisted, and Buddhist monasteries became centers of learning and cultural exchange. Decline and the fragmentation of the late Tang. By the late Tang period, however, internal strife, rebellion, and external threats led to the empire's fragmentation. The Lushan Rebellion, 755 to 763, one of the deadliest uprisings in Chinese history, severely weakened the dynasty. The rebellion, along with rising regional autonomy, undermined central authority and led to a gradual decline in imperial control. The eventual fragmentation of the empire paved the way for the 5 dynasties and 10 kingdoms period, a time of political instability that lasted until the rise of the Song dynasty. The Song dynasty, 960 to 1279. Following the fragmentation of the Tang dynasty, the Song dynasty emerged as a new period of Chinese history, marked by major administrative reforms, economic growth, technological advances, and cultural achievements. The Song period saw China's role as the world's leading civilization solidified, with significant achievements that influenced future generations and civilizations. Reunification and administrative reforms. The Song dynasty was founded by Emperor Taizu in 960, who reunified China after a period of disunion. Despite its military limitations, the Song dynasty is often noted for its bureaucratic efficiency and administrative reforms. Emperor Taizu and his successors introduced reforms to strengthen central authority and reduce corruption. One of the most significant reforms was the civil service examination system, which had been expanded and refined from the Tang dynasty. The exams ensured that government positions were filled with educated and capable individuals, which helped stabilize the empire and foster economic growth. Economic revolution, commercialization, urban growth, and technological innovation. The Song dynasty was an era of remarkable economic growth, driven by commercialization and technological innovation. One of the key innovations of the Song period was the widespread use of paper money, which greatly enhanced trade and commerce within the empire. The Grand Canal was also expanded and further developed during the Song period, enhancing internal trade and the movement of goods. China's economy boomed during the Song dynasty, leading to significant urbanization. Major cities like Kaifeng and Hangzhou grew into bustling metropolitan centers with active markets, entertainment, and cultural life. The rise of an affluent merchant class marked a shift in Chinese society, where wealth and power were no longer solely concentrated in the hands of the aristocracy. Technologically, the Song dynasty saw groundbreaking inventions, including the compass, printing press, and gunpowder. The printing press, in particular, revolutionized the spread of knowledge, allowing for the mass production of books and the dissemination of ideas. These innovations not only transformed Chinese society but also had lasting impacts on the rest of the world. Neo-Confucianism and intellectual life. Intellectually, the Song dynasty was defined by the rise of Neo-Confucianism, a movement that sought to reinterpret Confucian teachings in response to the challenges posed by Buddhism and Taoism. Leading scholars like Zhou, she played a crucial role in developing the ideas of Neo-Confucianism, emphasizing the importance of morality, education, and rational inquiry. The growth of Neo-Confucianism helped shape Chinese intellectual life for centuries to come, influencing everything from government to family structures. Social mobility and the scholar-official class. The Song dynasty saw the rise of a new class of scholar officials who held the highest positions in government. These officials were typically selected through the civil service exams, which opened the doors for social mobility. The scholar officials became the backbone of the Song bureaucracy, ensuring the smooth functioning of government and reinforcing the Confucian values of meritocracy and education. Relations with nomadic neighbors and military challenges. Despite the impressive achievements of the Song dynasty, it faced ongoing challenges from nomadic tribes to the north, particularly the Khitan, Jurchen, and eventually the Mongols. The Song military struggled to defend against these invaders, which ultimately led to the fall of the northern Song in 1127 and the establishment of the southern Song dynasty. Cultural achievements: art, literature, and science. The Song dynasty is famous for its artistic achievements, particularly in landscape painting, ceramics, and literature. The period saw the flourishing of literature and poetry, with figures like Su Shi contributing to the literary culture. Song artists developed a unique style of painting, focusing on the beauty of nature and the human spirit's connection to it. Scientifically, the Song dynasty made significant strides, particularly in astronomy, engineering, and medicine. The Song's contributions to mathematics, particularly in the use of negative numbers, were groundbreaking, and many of these advancements would influence later developments in both China and the broader world. Southern Song and the Mongol conquest. The Southern Song dynasty, 1127 to 1279, continued many of the policies and achievements of the Northern Song, but it faced immense military pressure from the Mongols. Despite impressive cultural and economic achievements, the Southern Song was ultimately defeated by the Mongols under Kublai Khan, marking the end of the Song dynasty and the beginning of the Yuan dynasty. The Yuan dynasty, 1271 to 1368. The Yuan dynasty, founded by the Mongol leader Kublai Khan, was a time of significant change in China. It was the first time that China was ruled by a non-Han dynasty, which had profound implications for Chinese society, politics, and culture. During the Yuan period, China became part of the vast Mongol Empire, and this integration led to significant cultural exchanges across Eurasia. Mongol conquest and the rule of Kublai Khan. The Mongol conquest of China was one of the most dramatic events in Chinese history. Led by Genghis Khan and later by his grandson, Kublai Khan, the Mongols gradually subdued the Song dynasty and established the Yuan dynasty in 1271. Under Kublai Khan, the Mongols consolidated their rule over all of China, including the vast territories to the west, stretching from Central Asia to the Middle East. Kublai Khan promoted a policy of religious tolerance, allowing the practice of Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, and Islam. He also made significant efforts to govern China as a centralized empire, attempting to integrate Mongol and Chinese institutions. Integration of China into the Mongol Empire. The Yuan dynasty marked the point at which China became fully integrated into the Mongol Empire, and this brought both benefits and challenges. The Silk Road flourished under Mongol rule. The Ming dynasty, 1368 to 1644. The Ming dynasty was a period of recovery and flourishing for Han Chinese rule following the fall of the Yuan dynasty, which had been ruled by the Mongols. The Ming dynasty is marked by strong centralized rule, economic growth, and remarkable achievements in culture, art, and maritime exploration, along with significant internal and external challenges. Restoration of Han Chinese rule. The Ming dynasty was founded by Zhou Yuanzhang, later known as Emperor Hongwu, in 1368 after overthrowing the Mongol-led Yuan dynasty. This marked the restoration of Han Chinese rule in China, and Hongwu sought to strengthen the centralized power of the emperor while eliminating the Mongol influence. The Ming emperors pursued a strong and stable government by enforcing Confucian principles, particularly emphasizing moral governance and state control. Centralization, bureaucracy, and the examination system. The Ming dynasty saw the strengthening of the centralized bureaucracy, a hallmark of imperial China, with a strong emphasis on merit-based civil service recruitment through the imperial examination system. The system, which had been a central feature of government since the Tang dynasty, was solidified under the Ming. Those who passed the rigorous exams were able to enter the government and ascend the ranks of administration, allowing for the rise of a competent scholar official class. This meritocratic approach helped stabilize and institutionalize government during the Ming period. At the same time, the emperor held significant power, with the emperor's inner court, which included family members and trusted officials, exercising considerable influence. Despite bureaucratic reforms, the Ming emperors maintained their absolute authority, often micromanaging administration to ensure loyalty. Maritime exploration, Zhang He's voyages. One of the most remarkable features of the Ming dynasty was its maritime exploration, especially during the reign of Emperor Yongle. The most famous expeditions were those led by the Admiral Zhang He, a Muslim eunuch, who commanded several massive naval expeditions from 1405 to 1433. These voyages, which took Zhang He to Southeast Asia, South Asia, the Arabian Peninsula, and the east coast of Africa, aimed to expand China's diplomatic reach, establish tributary relationships, and showcase the wealth and power of the Ming Empire. Zhang He's fleet was unmatched in size and technological sophistication at the time, and the voyages resulted in increased trade, cultural exchanges, and a strengthened diplomatic network. However, after the death of Emperor Yongle, the Ming court became more insular, and the exploration expeditions were abruptly halted in favor of focusing on internal affairs, urbanization, commerce, and the arts. The Ming dynasty also saw significant urbanization. Cities like Nanjing and Beijing flourished, with an influx of people from rural areas. This urban growth was accompanied by commercial expansion, particularly in the textile industry, ceramics, and paper. China became a center of international trade, and the Silkroad and maritime routes were critical to the economy. The arts and culture flourished as well. Ming porcelain became world-renowned for its quality and design. The Ming period saw the rise of woodblock printing and the creation of significant literary and artistic works. This was also a time when the Peking opera emerged, and painting, calligraphy, and philosophy all flourished under the patronage of the ruling class. Great Wall reconstruction and defense. The Ming dynasty is also remembered for the extensive reconstruction and expansion of the Great Wall of China. Initially built during the earlier dynasties as a defense against northern nomads, the Great Wall was significantly reinforced during the Ming period, particularly to fend off the Mongols and other nomadic tribes from the northwest. The wall was built to prevent invasions and to provide a clear boundary between China and the so-called barbarian tribes. The construction of the Great Wall became one of the most ambitious architectural and military projects in Chinese history. With its watchtowers, signal fires, and military garrisons, the wall represented both a physical and symbolic barrier. Internal challenges and the fall of the Ming. While the early Ming dynasty was marked by prosperity, the later years saw increasing internal unrest, corruption, and financial difficulties. As the dynasty weakened, corruption in the imperial court and among officials became rampant. The imperial bureaucracy became inefficient and ineffectual in dealing with growing social unrest, natural disasters, and military challenges. Rebellions, such as the Li Zicheng Rebellion, further destabilized the empire. By 1644, the Ming dynasty collapsed under the weight of these internal pressures and external invasions. The Manchu people from the northeast seized the opportunity to invade and eventually founded the Qing dynasty after the fall of the Ming. The Qing dynasty, 1644 to 1911. The Qing dynasty was the last imperial dynasty of China, and it ruled from 1644 to 1911. The Qing period saw the expansion of the Chinese empire to its greatest territorial extent, as well as a flourishing of art, literature, and philosophy. However, it was also marked by internal unrest, external pressures, and eventual decline, which culminated in the fall of the empire in the early 20th century. Manchu conquest and the expansion of the empire. The Qing dynasty was established by the Manchu people, a northern nomadic group who had long been in conflict with the Chinese. After the collapse of the Ming dynasty in 1644, the Manchu forces took advantage of the power vacuum and seized control of Beijing, beginning their reign as emperors of China. Under the leadership of the early Qing emperors, especially Emperor Kangxi and Emperor Qianlong, the Qing dynasty expanded China's territory significantly. The empire included Mongolia, Tibet, Xinjiang, and parts of Central Asia. The Qing era was marked by territorial consolidation, as the Manchu rulers successfully incorporated these diverse regions into the empire. Multi-ethnic administration and imperial ideology. One of the distinctive features of the Qing dynasty was its multi-ethnic administration. While the ruling class was Manchu, the vast majority of the population was Han Chinese. To ensure loyalty and maintain stability, the Qing emperors adopted a policy of cultural integration. They retained many of the existing Confucian traditions and even promoted the Confucian examination system for government officials, while also incorporating Manchu customs into the court and military. The Qing emperors also emphasized their divine right to rule, presenting themselves as the sons of heaven and promoting the idea of imperial unity across different ethnic groups. Population growth, economic change, and social structure. Under the Qing dynasty, China saw significant population growth, which had both positive and negative effects. The population nearly doubled from around 150 million to over 400 million by the 19th century, spurring the need for greater agricultural production, urbanization, and technological innovations. Economically, the Qing dynasty benefited from agricultural expansion, trade, and domestic industries. The cultivation of rice, tea, and silk became crucial to the economy. However, the population boom placed a heavy strain on the available resources and led to social inequality. The class system remained largely intact, with the emperor and aristocracy at the top, followed by scholars, farmers, artisans, and merchants. The Qing dynasty, like previous dynasties, was deeply rooted in Confucian principles that reinforced hierarchical structures. Cultural flourishing, literature, painting, and philosophy. The Qing dynasty was also a period of significant cultural flourishing. Chinese literature thrived during this period, with works like The Dream of the Red Chamber by Chao Shuoqin, one of China's 4 great classical novels, becoming iconic examples of Chinese literary culture. Additionally, traditional Chinese painting saw a renaissance, and calligraphy remained a highly valued art form. Philosophical thought during the Qing period was also influenced by Neo-Confucianism, and intellectuals continued to debate ideas about morality, governance, and the role of the individual in society. Encounters with the West, trade, missionaries, and the Opium Wars. The Qing dynasty's encounters with the West had profound impacts on Chinese society. The opening of trade between China and European powers, particularly through the opium trade, would lead to significant political and economic tensions. British trade in opium became a central issue, and when China attempted to curb the opium trade, it led to the Opium Wars, 1839 to 1842 and 1856 to 1860, which resulted in humiliating defeats for China and the signing of unequal treaties that favored Western powers. These events marked the beginning of China's modern era, with increasing foreign influence and the loss of imperial sovereignty. Internal unrest, Taiping and Boxer rebellions. In the 19th century, the Qing dynasty faced severe internal unrest, most notably the Taiping Rebellion, 1850 to 1864, which was one of the deadliest conflicts in world history. Led by Hong Xiuquan, the Taiping forces sought to establish a new religious state and challenged the Qing government. The rebellion was ultimately suppressed, but it severely weakened the Qing dynasty. The Boxer Rebellion, 1899 to 1901, was another major uprising, this time against foreign influence and Christian missionaries. The Qing government's failure to manage these internal conflicts further eroded its power and credibility. Decline, reform efforts, and the end of imperial rule. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the Qing dynasty was in rapid decline. Reform efforts, including the self-strengthening movement and the 100 Days Reform, failed to address the challenges posed by foreign powers and internal strife. The Xinhai Revolution in 1911 ultimately led to the abdication of the last Qing emperor, Huai, and the establishment of the Republic of China. The Republican era, 1912 to 1949. The Republican era in China was a turbulent period characterized by political fragmentation, foreign invasion, and social upheaval. Following the fall of the Qing dynasty in 1912, the country struggled with issues of national unity, foreign influence, and modernization. The Republic of China, led initially by Sun Yat-sen and later by the Nationalist Party, Kuomintang, KMT, faced numerous challenges in its efforts to consolidate power and establish a stable, unified state. The 1911 Revolution and the fall of the Qing. The 1911 Revolution marked the end of over 2,000 years of imperial rule in China. The revolution was sparked by widespread dissatisfaction with the Qing dynasty, which had become increasingly corrupt, ineffective, and unable to respond to internal crises or foreign aggression. The Wuchang Uprising in October 1911, led by revolutionary groups, ignited a nationwide movement that culminated in the abdication of the last Qing emperor, Huai, in February 1912. This event led to the establishment of the Republic of China, with Sun Yat-sen as its provisional president. The revolution was inspired by nationalist, democratic, and anti-imperialist ideals, influenced by the three principles of the people: nationalism, democracy, and people's livelihood, which Sun advocated. However, the new republic faced immediate difficulties in consolidating power, as warlords in different regions of the country continued to wield significant influence. Warlord era and the struggle for national unity. After the fall of the Qing dynasty, China entered a period of disunity known as the Warlord Era, 1916 to 1928, during which the country was fragmented into competing regional factions. Warlords, often former military leaders, controlled various provinces and engaged in constant military conflict with each other. The central government, based in Beijing, was weak and lacked the power to unify the country. During this period, the Kuomintang, KMT, led by Sun Yat-sen and later Chiang Kai-shek, emerged as the principal political force aiming to unify China and end the warlordism. In 1926, the KMT launched the Northern Expedition, a military campaign to defeat the warlords and consolidate national unity, which succeeded by 1928, leading to the establishment of the Nanjing government under Chiang Kai-shek. May 4th Movement and Cultural Transformation. The May 4th movement of 1919 was a pivotal event in modern Chinese history, which began as a student protest against the Treaty of Versailles, which had awarded Chinese territories to Japan. The movement quickly expanded to become a broader cultural and intellectual revolution that called for a rejection of traditional Confucian values and a push for modernization, nationalism, and intellectual openness. The New Culture movement, which had been gaining ground in the years prior, provided the ideological foundation for the May 4th protests, advocating for science, democracy, and the rejection of old cultural norms. The May 4th movement spurred the rise of radical political ideologies, including communism, and it was during this time that the Chinese Communist Party, CCP, was founded in 1921. The movement also played a crucial role in shaping Chinese literature and philosophy, encouraging the use of vernacular Chinese, as opposed to classical Chinese, and promoting new forms of art, literature, and thought. Nationalist government and modernization attempts. In the 1920s and 1930s, the nationalist government under Chiang Kai-shek worked to modernize China and strengthen the central government. Chiang focused on rebuilding China's infrastructure, improving education, and promoting economic development. However, his government faced significant challenges, including a divided country, internal opposition from the communists, and external threats from Japan. Chiang's efforts to modernize China were hampered by both corruption within the government and his inability to implement widespread reforms. The nationalists also struggled to gain popular support, as many Chinese citizens were still living in poverty, and the country's rural population felt disconnected from the government's urban-centric policies. Japanese invasion and World War II. The period leading up to and during World War II was marked by Japanese aggression and invasion. In 1931, Japan invaded Manchuria, a region in northeastern China, which was later established as the puppet state of Manchukuo. In 1937, the situation escalated with the Second Sino-Japanese War when Japan launched a full-scale invasion of China. This marked the beginning of a brutal conflict that would last until the end of World War II. The nationalist government, under Chiang Kai-shek, led the resistance to Japanese aggression. However, Japan's military superiority and brutal tactics, such as the Nanjing Massacre, 1937, made the war devastating for the Chinese population. While the nationalists were the primary force in fighting Japan, the Chinese communists, led by Mao Zedong, also contributed to the resistance effort, which helped to boost their popularity in rural areas. The war with Japan ended in 1945, with the defeat of Japan after its surrender following the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. However, the war left China severely weakened and further divided, setting the stage for the subsequent Civil War. Civil War between nationalists and communists. Following the end of World War II, China plunged into a civil war between the nationalists, Kuomintang, and the communists, Chinese Communist Party. The conflict was rooted in ideological differences, with the nationalists supporting a capitalist, nationalist government and the communists advocating for Marxist-Leninist principles and a classless society. The Civil War, which lasted from 1945 to 1949, was primarily fought in the northern and central regions of China. The communists, under Mao Zedong, had significant support among the rural peasantry, who were dissatisfied with the nationalist government. On the other hand, the nationalists, despite having superior military resources, struggled with internal corruption, lack of popular support, and a weakened economy. By 1949, the Communist Party had gained the upper hand, and Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalists retreated to Taiwan, where they established a separate government. The Communist Party took control of mainland China, marking the official end of the Civil War and the establishment of the People's Republic of China, PRC, on October 1, 1949. The People's Republic of China, 1949, the present. The establishment of the People's Republic of China marked the beginning of a new era in Chinese history, characterized by communist rule under Mao Zedong. The PRC has undergone significant changes over the decades, transforming from a nation plagued by internal and external conflicts into a global economic power. The following sections provide an overview of the key events and policies during this period. Founding of the PRC, Mao Zedong and communist rule. Upon the establishment of the PRC, Mao Zedong became its first chairman. His leadership marked the start of radical transformations in Chinese society, with the Communist Party implementing policies aimed at restructuring the economy, society, and culture. The PRC's early years were marked by a strong emphasis on communist ideology, collectivization, and the consolidation of political power. Mao's leadership was defined by his vision of transforming China into a socialist society. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, sought to eliminate capitalist elements and establish a classless society. However, Mao's policies would also lead to significant hardship for millions of Chinese citizens. Land reform, collectivization, and the Great Leap Forward. In the early 1950s, the CCP implemented a land reform program that aimed to redistribute land from wealthy landowners to peasants. While the reform initially gained popularity among the rural population, it was also marked by violence and coercion as landlords were persecuted and killed. In 1958, Mao launched the Great Leap Forward, an ambitious attempt to rapidly industrialize China and improve agricultural production through collectivization. The policy called for the creation of large communes, which would manage both agricultural production and industrial output. Unfortunately, the Great Leap Forward led to disastrous results, including widespread famine that caused the deaths of millions of people. The economic and social damage caused by the program led to Mao's eventual retreat from direct economic policymaking. Cultural revolution, ideology, upheaval, and its consequences. From 1966 to 1976, Mao launched the Cultural Revolution, a period of intense political and social upheaval aimed at purging China of capitalist, traditional, and intellectual elements. The movement was also intended to reaffirm Mao's leadership within the Communist Party. Young people, known as the Red Guards, were encouraged to attack perceived enemies of the revolution, including teachers, intellectuals, and anyone associated with the old societal structures. The Cultural Revolution led to widespread chaos, persecution, and the destruction of China's cultural heritage. Millions of people were affected by violence, and the economy suffered severely. The movement ended in 1976 with Mao's death, leaving behind a deeply divided and scarred China. Economic reforms and opening up under Deng Xiaoping. After Mao's death, the CCP, under the leadership of Deng Xiaoping, initiated economic reforms in the late 1970s that radically transformed China's economy. Deng implemented market-oriented reforms that allowed private enterprise, foreign investment, and a greater role for the market in determining economic outcomes. This period of reform and opening up led to rapid economic growth and modernization, lifting millions of people out of poverty. Conclusion: continuity and change in Chinese civilization. The history of Chinese civilization is one of remarkable depth, complexity, and resilience. Spanning thousands of years, China's evolution has been shaped by cycles of unity and fragmentation, innovation and tradition, as well as periods of prosperity and decline. From the early dynasties like the Shang and Zhou, through the rise and fall of empires such as the Qin, Han, Tang, and Ming, to the turmoil and transformation of the Republican and People's Republic of China, Chinese civilization has continually adapted to new challenges while retaining its deep cultural roots. Today, modern China stands as a global power, yet its ties to its dynastic past remain evident in its culture, values, and governance. The enduring legacy of the dynastic past. The dynastic past of China has left an indelible mark on its modern identity. From the political organization to philosophical traditions, the achievements and failures of past dynasties continue to influence Chinese society and governance today. The Confucian ideals that were central to the governance and societal structure of many dynasties, particularly during the Han Dynasty, remain influential. The imperial bureaucracy created during the Qin and Han periods laid the groundwork for the modern Chinese state apparatus. Even today, the Chinese Communist Party draws upon aspects of past governance, including centralized control and an emphasis on state authority. Cultural continuity is another enduring feature of China's civilization. Traditional arts, literature, and philosophies like Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, which have shaped Chinese thought for millennia, still play significant roles in both public and private life. While modernization has introduced new global influences, traditional Chinese values of family and respect for authority continue to shape the country's social fabric. The Great Wall of China, a symbol of both ancient engineering and the country's enduring desire for unity and defense, stands as a powerful reminder of the dynastic past. Similarly, the Terracotta Army and the Forbidden City continue to serve as cultural and historical touchstones, drawing millions of visitors each year to witness China's ancient grandeur. Modern China's relationship with its history. As China entered the 20th century, its relationship with its historical legacy became more complicated. The fall of the Qing dynasty and the ensuing conflicts, such as the May 4th movement, marked a period of profound questioning of traditional values and practices. The desire to modernize and catch up with the Western powers of the time led to the rejection of certain aspects of China's past, including the imperial system, feudal structures, and Confucian hierarchy. The Communist Revolution in 1949 brought another shift, as the government sought to create a new identity for China, one that was free from the constraints of imperialism, feudalism, and foreign exploitation. However, despite efforts to break from the past, many aspects of China's dynastic heritage continued to influence the People's Republic of China, PRC. Mao Zedong's government, though revolutionary in its aims, drew upon some of the organizational methods of past dynasties, such as centralization of power and state control over many aspects of life. Even during the radical cultural revolution, there was a nostalgic desire to preserve and purify Chinese culture, albeit in a form that rejected certain old practices deemed counter-revolutionary. In recent decades, China has increasingly looked to its past for both inspiration and identity. The Tiananmen Square protests of 1989, though politically repressed, showcased the power of the people in voicing their discontent, drawing on the long history of Chinese resistance and reform movements. At the same time, China's return to Confucian principles, particularly in terms of family values and social harmony, reflects a revival of traditional thought. China's economic rise in the 21st century has further complicated its relationship with its past. As the country becomes a global economic power, it must balance the demands of modernity and globalization with the preservation of its cultural heritage. The Chinese government has embraced its imperial heritage in efforts to promote national pride, encouraging citizens to see themselves as part of a long, unbroken civilization. Yet, it must also reconcile this with the social and political challenges of modernity, including environmental sustainability, economic inequality, and political reform. China's role in the contemporary world. In the 21st century, China has emerged as a dominant force on the world stage, with an economy that ranks as the second largest globally, behind only the United States. This shift from a traditionally agrarian society to an industrial and technological powerhouse reflects the profound changes that have taken place over the past few decades. As a result, China now wields significant influence in international affairs, ranging from trade and diplomacy to military and technological innovation. China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, launched in 2013, demonstrates the country's desire to reinstate its historical role as a leader in global commerce and diplomacy. The initiative aims to expand China's influence through infrastructure development, trade partnerships, and cultural exchanges across Asia, Africa, and Europe. In this way, China is seeking to revive the ancient Silkroad, which once linked the East and West. At the same time, China is contending with new challenges that require a balance between tradition and modernity. Environmental issues, such as pollution and climate change, are increasingly significant as China's rapid industrialization has taken a toll on its natural resources. The government has introduced ambitious goals to become a leader in green technology and sustainability, aiming to transition to a more sustainable development model. China's global political role is also evolving. The country's rise as a major international player brings both opportunities and tensions. Its growing influence in global governance institutions, such as the United Nations, the World Trade Organization, WTO, and the International Monetary Fund, IMF, has reshaped international dynamics. However, China's assertive foreign policy, especially in areas like the South China Sea, has led to tensions with other global powers, including the United States and neighboring countries. China's relationship with the West, particularly the United States, remains complex. As the two largest economies in the world, China and the US are intertwined through trade, investment, and technology. However, political differences, especially regarding human rights, democracy, and global leadership, have created significant challenges. The trade war between China and the US, which escalated in the late 2010s, highlights these ongoing tensions and the challenges of navigating a changing world order. In conclusion, the enduring legacy of Chinese civilization is a testament to its ability to adapt and evolve over thousands of years. From the ancient dynasties that shaped its political, cultural, and social structures to the People's Republic of China today, the threads of continuity and change run throughout Chinese history. Modern China has achieved unprecedented economic success, yet it remains deeply connected to its rich past. As China continues to assert itself on the world stage, it will face both challenges and opportunities in maintaining a delicate balance between its historical legacy and its ambitions for the future. The country's role in the global community will continue to grow, and its relationship with its history will undoubtedly shape how it navigates the complexities of the 21st century. The story of Chinese civilization is not just one of the past, but a dynamic narrative that continues to unfold in the present, influencing the course of global events and shaping the future of humankind.